Are you trying to make a career change and you have applied to 30 jobs, maybe 50 or more, and you're getting nothing? Like you're not getting callbacks, you're not getting interviews. Maybe you're getting one or two rejections that say something like, we've decided to move forward with other candidates. And you are sitting there thinking, I'm qualified for these jobs. I have the skills. Why is no one calling me back? Well, your resume might not be explaining your career pivot properly. It could just be listing what you did in your old industry, and hiring managers are looking at it and going, okay, but what does this have to do with the job I'm hiring for? And if hiring managers can't see how you're qualified for a role very quickly, they usually just move on to the next resume. So in this video, I am going to show you the one section you absolutely must have on your resume when you are making a career change specifically, or a career pivot, and the exact structure that you need to use to write your bullet points to show that you are qualified for the job that you're applying for, even when you don't have direct experience. If you are new here, hi, and if you are a regular viewer, welcome back. I am Dr. Tega, a career coach who helps professional women leave soul-sucking, draining jobs that they don't like or enjoy and land higher paying, more fulfilling careers that they can thrive in by helping them clarify their next career move and job search without burning out. Let's get into today's video. So here's what I see most career change resumes that I've come across. Someone spends years in, let's say, education. They're a teacher and they want to pivot into corporate training or instructional design. So on their resume, they will open up their resume and at the top, they'll write something like experienced educator with 10 plus years in classroom instruction. And then as you scroll down and read their bullet points, you see, or I see things like developed lesson plans for diverse student populations, managed classroom of 30 plus students, improved test scores by 15%. And then they send this resume in for a corporate training role and they hear nothing back. Why? Well, I can't speak for everyone, but outside of factors you can't control, like them already having a candidate that they wanted to hire, one of the reasons that you might not be moving forward is because the hiring manager doesn't see classroom instruction and immediately think corporate training. Like they're seeing two different things when they read your resume. They don't see lesson plans and think training curriculum, or managed classrooms and think facilitating workshops. Like the hiring manager isn't making those connections that you think are obvious. And honestly, it's not their job to make those connections. It is your job to make those connections for them. And most career change resumes just don't do that. They make the hiring manager work way too hard to figure out why you're relevant. And when you make someone work too hard, they just move on to the next resume. So when you are pivoting, your resume has two jobs. First, explain why you're making this change and why it makes sense. And second, show how your experience connects to what they need. And most resumes skip number one entirely. They jump straight to, here's what I did, without ever answering, here's why I am applying to this job at this company in this industry. And that is the problem. So let's talk about how to fix it. So lately, when I have been working with my clients who are making career pivots, I've been using a very specific resume sort of structure in the top format with them. And I want to share it with you, like the very first part of the resume, because that is the most important place where you get to pass the 6-second scan. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, when recruiters, hiring managers, people in general, when they're looking at your resume, they first scan like down the right side of your resume or the left side. They do a quick scan down to get a overview of the candidate. And as they're doing that scan, they use that time to create two piles, the yes pile and the no pile, meaning the resumes they want to come back to and read in more detail, and the resumes that they're like, this is not a fit, I'm moving on. So if your resume doesn't pass that initial scan, and mind you, I've heard from some recruiters that it's literally like 2 seconds they use to make that decision. So if your resume doesn't pass that initial scan, then you essentially never even had a chance, because they never actually sat down to read in detail all the content that you spent so much time meticulously putting together. So the very top of your resume, before you even start with your bullet points, before your work history, you need a section that answers why this industry now, right? So not just saying, here's a summary of my background or here's what I'm good at. You need to tell them, here is why I am interested in this industry specifically. And here's the value that I bring because of my unique background. And this section can have like any title you want. I'm not a fan of just like writing summary or a professional summary because that doesn't really tell them much about what's in that section. I like to create a title. So for example, if we stick with that teacher and corporate training experience that I said earlier, that section might be something like training highlights or corporate training highlights or training outcomes, something like that. And the best way to approach this section is what I call an anchor story. And this is the one story that really breaks down your professional experience, how it led to this industry and why you're applying to this job right now. Now, mind you, writing a story in this section is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you want to keep that anchor story in mind and use it to guide this first section. So in the section, you're going to write the typical highlights, right? Things that are relevant to the job that you're applying for. So think things like accomplishments, big wins, tools that you're proficient in. And then you would end the section with a personalized sentence that kind of summarizes that anchor story. And what this does is it really makes your resume stand out because one, it's not the usual regurgitation of the job description or, just like keyword stuff in your resume. And two, it really helps them understand why you are making this pivot right now. So to give a concrete example, I had a client who was making a pivot from a lab quality testing role into insurance analysis. And at first she had no anchor story. She was applying to this job just because she thought she was qualified. But when we dug deeper, we found her anchor story. And it was that 9 days after she bought her first car, she got into an accident. And her insurance company essentially took care of everything, right? Like they got her a rental car that was nicer than the car she had. They, took care of the costs. They covered the repairs. She didn't really have to stress too much because of, how her insurance company helped. And the way we positioned it was that experience showed her how critical insurance is and made her value it. So now that is a unique anchor story that we can add on to that top section in her resume. So instead of just saying something like experienced lab technician with background in compliance and data, which is very focused on lab, we had 2 to 3 sentences with professional accomplishments relevant to the job and ended this section with a sentence that said something like a positive personal experience with insurance paired with 7+ years of quality analysis across regulated industries led me to this moment. A move from public health to insurance. I'm excited to bring my precision and commitment to clients in the insurance industry. So writing something like this does a couple of things. First, it personalizes and humanizes you, which I just think is super important right now, especially in this age of AI generated resume. And second, it makes it clear to the reader early on why you're making this switch to this industry, right? You don't want them reading your resume thinking the entire time, how is this person even qualified for the job they applied for? So this type of sentence catches their attention, right? They're not confused. It makes it clear why you are applying and it can make them curious, right? And if they're curious, they will keep reading the rest of the resume to see the rest of your great skills and accomplishments that make you qualified for the role. Then the second thing to consider as a career changer is how you write your bullet points. So you've explained at the top why you're making this change, right? That's at the top of the resume. Now you need to show how your experience actually connects to what they need in the bullet points on your resume. And this, I think, is where most people mess up because a lot of people tend to just write bullet points that describe the tasks they did instead of showing impact. And in general, right, you never want to just write tasks on your resume, even if you weren't making a career change. But when you're making a career change, even more so, you want to show that you were an impactful employee to the organization. You can't just list tasks because your tasks are most likely, as a career changer, all positioning you for the job you're trying to leave. not the job you're trying to land. And when you are applying for any job, your job is to market yourself for the job you want to land, not the job you've had in the past. How many times can I say the word job? Okay, so here's the framework that I want you to use for writing your bullet points. I call it the skill tool outcome model, meaning that every resume bullet, every bullet point you write on your resume should include those three things in some way, shape, or form. Okay, the skill that you use to accomplish the task, the tool that you use to accomplish the task if that's relevant, and the outcome of the task. So why did the task matter? How did it make a difference? What changed because you did this task? So if I were to break down that model into like a very specific format for writing your bullet points, this is what that formula would look like. An action verb plus a work task or a skill plus a tool plus the outcome. Now, they don't have to appear in that specific order. For example, you might do action, verb, tool, task, and then impact, and that's fine. But these are the general components that you want to show up in your bullet point. So let me show you what this might look like as a concrete example. So let's say you are a teacher and you are pivoting into corporate training. What you would likely see on most teacher resumes is something like develop lesson plans for diverse student populations. But that is just a task. It doesn't show impact and it doesn't connect to corporate training. Okay. The hiring manager is going to read that and think, okay, but how does creating lesson plans for 8th graders, how does that help with training my sales team, for example? They can't clearly see the connection, so they'll likely move on to the next resume. Now, if you use the skill tool outcome model, a new bullet point might say something like designed 12-week curriculum using backward design methodology to improve student engagement scores by 35%, resulting in a 90% course completion rate across 150 plus students. So can you see how that is different? We added the tool. Okay, the tool here is backward design methodology. So backward design is an instructional design framework, and corporate trainers often use the exact same methodology when they are building training programs. So now you are providing or you are proving that you already know how to design learning experiences using a professional framework and you're not just winging it in your classroom. We added the skill, curriculum design that improves corporate engagement. Corporate training is not just about information dump. It is about keeping employees engaged so that they actually retain what they're learning, right? So engagement is one of the number one metrics that corporate trainers care about. So now with this bullet point, you're proving that you know how to design learning that people actually pay attention to. And then we added the outcome, 35% improvement in engagement, 90% completion rates. Those are measurable results. And the thing is, corporate training programs are evaluated on completion rates and engagement metrics. So with that one bullet point, you just prove that you can deliver the exact outcomes that their training programs are measured on. And we even added the scale. So 150 students, that's, using numbers, and corporate trainers often design programs to reach hundreds of employees. So you just showed that you can design learning at scale, not just for one classroom. So this bullet isn't just about teaching kids. What we have now done is created a bullet that shows instructional design, engagement optimization, and measurable learning outcomes, which are all things that matter in corporate training. So when the hiring manager reads this, they're not wondering, can a teacher do corporate training? They're thinking, oh, okay, this person already knows how to design engaging learning experiences, right? This person knows how to drive completion. They might need to learn our content. So that is why this skill tool outcome formula is so important. Now, when you're thinking about making a career change or a pivot specifically, the reason why this works is the tool is the bridge. Okay. When you name the specific tool or skill that you use, especially if you look at the job description and use a tool on the job description, now you're showing you have the technical ability to do the job, right? It's not just I can do the job. It's I can use this specific method or tool. Outcome is universal currency. Legit, every industry cares about results. So when you show measurable outcomes, especially focusing on the types of impact that the organization cares about, you're now speaking a language that translates across industries. Okay. Outcome is how you show your impact. And then the work task or the skills is the transferable responsibility. This is where you're showing that I've done something similar to what you are asking for, just in a different context. And when you put all three of those things together, you create a bullet point on your resume that makes sense to someone who has never worked in your industry before. Okay. Now, before I share how you can use the job description to help you break down exactly what content to put on your resume, if you are finding this video helpful so far, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Liking this video ensures that YouTube knows that it is worth sharing this video with more people, and subscribing ensures that you don't miss this video, or rather you don't miss future videos when I drop more videos that can continue helping you as you make your career change or your career pivot. And candidly, it does help this channel grow. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, if you want the complete system for translating your experience and writing a career change resume that actually works to land more interviews and offers, I built the Peaceful Pivot Guide specifically for this, okay? It has my target resume system and skills translation worksheets to help you. So you can go to the description to see a link to grab your copy. All right, now, if you've been working in your specific career path for 8 or more years, you probably have a ton of experience at this point. So it can be hard when you're making a change to figure out what exactly do you write on your resume, right? Like, yes, I shared the bullet point template, but how do you pick which of your experiences to put on the resume so that it markets you for this job in a new industry that you're trying to land? Well, this is where the job description comes in. Now, before I share this, it is very important to say, when you're making a career change, you absolutely need to have career clarity, meaning you are not applying for 5, 3, 2 different types of jobs. Okay. You know the one specific type of job you're trying to land in 3 to 5 industries max, because what this does is it will allow you to sit down and create a really strong resume that highlights your relevant skills for a relevant job. Okay. And this way, when you're applying to jobs, you're not frantically hacking your resume to fit the different job. Okay. You might need to tweak a word here and there just to better align with the company's words or company's language. But essentially, the relevant skills, the relevant accomplishments, the stories that you are telling on your resume about why this pivot makes sense should all already make sense for the job you are targeting, because you are targeting a very specific job. Okay. So to pick the content that you actually put on your resume, you can use the job description mapping method. This is essentially when you use the job description to map out what you highlight and focus on your resume. And here's how it works. Step 1 is print out the job description. Like, seriously, print it out, or at least put it in a Word or Google document. Because step 2, you're going to need to then highlight every single responsibility they list, every single one. And this will go fast because they all might be bulleted in one section, but sometimes they might split the responsibilities across multiple sections on the job description. Okay. Step 3, for 70% of the responsibilities on your list, you want to write one bullet point that shows that you've done something similar. So if the job description says, analyze customer data to identify trends, you don't just write, I analyze data, okay? You write, analyzed water quality data patterns to identify bacterial contaminant trends, preventing 3 potential outbreaks over 18 months. Can you see how that's different? You are addressing their requirement about analyzing data, but in a specific context. Can you see how that maps directly to their requirement, but in your specific context? Okay. So that is the job description mapping method. You're going responsibility by responsibility and showing them, I have done this and here is the proof. And the reason that this works is because now when the hiring manager is reading your resume, they are checking boxes off in their head, right? It's like analyze data, check. Identify trends, check. Prevent problems, check. Okay. You are making it super clear and super easy for them to see that you're qualified. And by the way, I intentionally said 70% because if you are 100% qualified for a job, you're overqualified. Okay. And the harsh truth is that employers don't like hiring employees who they think are overqualified for a job. Okay. I know that you might think that if you can do everything, then it increases your chances to get the job. False. It will be harder. Promise you. Because if they think that you are overqualified, they are going to think you're going to be too expensive of a hire for their budget. They are going to think that you will easily get bored in this job and leave, which means they'll have to be filling the role again in like a year. Or they're going to think that you're going to get bored and try to come for a more senior role that they're not ready to open up. So being overqualified is not a strength or an asset in your job search. Okay. My rule of thumb is if you can do 70 to 80% of the things on the job description, you're good to go. Now, when you use this JD mapping method, you will have bullet points that directly position you for the role, but usually that will not completely fill in your resume. So after you have used the job description, the next thing you want to do is do research on the role to try to see and think to yourself, what else might I be doing in this job that is not directly written on the job description? And how can I write that on my resume and show that I've done those things. Okay. So this is where some of your other past experiences might come in. Okay. You might be talking about things that you know are relevant to the job, but they were not directly listed on the job description. And that's how you fill in your resume. And one more quick note about your bullet points, quantify as many things as possible. Okay. Dollar amounts, percentages, growth numbers, deal sizes, time saved, people impacted. If you can put a number on it, put a number on it. Numbers attract the eye on a resume. Numbers also make you seem more credible because improved customer satisfaction is vague. Improved customer satisfaction ratings by 40%, reaching a 4.8 star average across 500 plus surveys. That is specific and credible. Okay. Numbers make your impact real. So use them. Now, why might this resume structure actually get you interviews specifically when you are changing careers? Well, first, that top section with your anchor story is going to help you pass the 6-second scan because now the hiring manager immediately understands why you're applying for the job. They're not confused. They're not wondering why is this person's application in front of me? They will get it. And then the skill tool outcome bullet framework is going to make sure that the ATS, the applicant tracking system, picks up the relevant keywords and skills from the job description. So your resume actually makes it to a human or also passes the 6-second test if a recruiter is doing the initial screening. It usually just depends. And then the quantified outcomes prove that you can deliver results even as a career changer, right? Not just do tasks. So you're not just saying, hey, I can do this job. You're proving I've already done work that created measurable value that you will care about. Okay. And then when you do one-to-one with the responsibilities on the job description, that helps the manager see that you've done 80% of what they're asking for. So they're not taking a huge risk on you. They're hiring somebody who's already proven that they can do similar work, just in a different context. And that is why this structure gets interviews, because it removes all the friction for the hiring team. It removes all the questions. It makes saying yes to bringing you in for an interview an easy decision. Okay. So you now know the key components for writing a career change resume that actually gets interviews. But here's the reality. Writing a resume that positions you correctly is just one part of a successful career pivot. You also need to know which skills to highlight in the first place, which is what I actually covered in my last video on making your skills relevant. I will link that on the screen somewhere. You need to know how to handle interviews when you are coming from a different industry. And you need to make sure that you are not picking a job based on what you can do as opposed to what you actually want to do. Because when you do that, that is how you end up miserable again in 6 months. And so all of that is exactly why I created the Peaceful Pivot Guide. The guide walks you through the entire career change process using my 5-step CLAIR framework. You get the target resume system with bullet point templates and real examples to help you write your own resume. You get the skill translation worksheet so that you can map your experience to any industry. You get specific AI prompts to help you do all of this faster and a unique writing system for actually writing resumes that position position you as the right candidate for the role. It is a self-paced resource, and I built it specifically for professionals who are changing careers and need a step-by-step practical tool to help you actually land a new job. You can go to pivotwithpeace.com to grab your copy today, or you can just tap that link in the description below to learn more about the guide and grab your copy today. Thank you for sticking around and watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you found it helpful. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to drop your questions in the comments below. I genuinely, truly enjoy answering questions and helping. So if you have any questions, drop them below. And if you did find this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe buttons. That way you don't miss future videos that will help you in your career. And once you hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons below, don't click away, because guess what? Watch this. There's another video. Another video is popping up on the screen right next to me right now. Watch that video. Click it. Click it. I bet you haven't watched that video before, and it's going to be really helpful.